Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. And folks, we have an absolutely outstanding show with a pinch of breaking news. That's right,
Ooh.
Jess Corden burning the midnight oil yesterday, dropping a bomb of a story. And that's right, Tango Gameworks and HiFi Rush are saved, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh.
The owner and operator of PUBG, not the obviously the other publisher, have actually struck a deal with Microsoft to acquire Tango Gameworks and of course the IP Hi-Fi Rush, with confirmation that further development of that IP will continue. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into I would say a pretty stout report that comes the way of Jason Schreier. Terrible human being, which of course that he is, but he is actually a pretty pointed journalist. Well, it turns out that Marathon, ladies and gentlemen, is in quote unquote, according to him on a podcast, in development hell. That does not sound good, because I got news for you. Considering, I mean, again, the last Destiny 2 DLC was really good for a lot of people that enjoy it, but it did not sell well. Obviously, we saw what happened with the layoffs. We saw what happened with Pete Parsons. We saw that Sony is now running the show, so to speak, with Destiny, as they were expected to do so. If they didn't sell enough, of the DLC, which that happened, and I don't know, folks. We're going to be asking the question whether or not what happens if Marathon fails in 2025. Is that the end of Bungie?
Ooh.
I don't know, but I mean, you got to sell, software in order to have a business, and if they're not going to sell, and it turns out to be not that great, I think that studio's in trouble. And that what makes it worse is that Sony spent $3.6 billion on that, which is not good, which is probably why Jim Ryan is no longer running the show. But that's not the only thing we're going to talk about, folks. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, one of the biggest, most anticipated Call of Duties in quite a bit. Well, all of the single player, story driven narrative, the cutscenes have leaked online. And you know what? We got a story that actually has the culprit, and that is jailbroken PS4s. Now, the
Ooh.
question is, Steel Rain, is that Activision's fault, or is Sony potentially a part of the problem? Because you know what? They've had issues with security for years, and they continue to do so. We're going to get into all of that, but Steel Rain, welcome back, my brother. It's great to have you here. How the heck are you, man?
Mr. BoomStick, man, it's always great to be back in the kingdom with you, brother. And we got Fuzzy's locked in as well as you all usually are week to week, man. So anytime I get to chop it up with my brothers, it's always a good time, and having the varying conversations, the multiple opinions, and I've been playing a lot of games, so I've been kind of like trying to find out still where the lapse in things to talk about are. But everybody's a little bit different, so I've been getting my Kimitsugami on, which I ended up beating that, and Flintlock is beat, and I'm just looking down the road at old Black Myth Wukong and trying to get myself hyped up. I'm out here making thumbnails and deciding if I want to stream and all this good stuff. But yeah,
that
man,
game definitely has you written all over it for sure.
Oh, 1000%. And from more things that we're seeing, there's more gameplay talk about leaks and stuff and whatnot. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you want to take it, there is more being shown, and it does seemingly come out to be a little bit more Souls-ish than people may like. But
Okay.
I don't know. I've also been hearing it's on the easier side, just like very similar to Wolong, which I think was an excellent game overall. But yeah, man. So looking forward to that. A lot of games on the horizon, a lot of things to talk about today, and I get to chop it up with my brothers, man. So we're gonna lock and load, man. I'm ready.
Well, we're happy to have you here joining us today. And we have three major stories to get into. Fuzzy Belvedere, brother, thank you so much for being a part of today's show. As always, three hot button topics. One, breaking news. Of course, that is the former Xbox studio Tango Gameworks and HiFi Rush have been acquired by PUBG's Krafton Incorporated, saving the studio from officially closing. This is what we're going to eventually open up with. But how are you doing, man? How was your weekend?
Oh, doing great. Glad to be here with you guys. Glad we got Steel Rain on here this morning as well. Man, it just like kind of like what Steel was saying, there's been a plethora of news here for these past few weeks, as well as there's a ton of games to go through. But we're going to have some interesting conversations on a lot of these hot topics today. Can't wait to get into them because I don't know. I kind of predicted that. Well, I predicted something slightly different for Bungie because I figured they would escape the threshold of a parent company again, but it looks like that might be the last deal that they ever make. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting and pointed conversation. Obviously, the final DLC for Destiny 2 came out. It was revered as a really good product. Now, granted, it did have some issues in inception. You know, there were a lot of people that couldn't get into the game. Eventually, they squared that away, which is great. And people really enjoyed it. People like Cognito, who's a huge Destiny guy, and they played through it. They enjoyed it. The problem is that there's no Destiny 3, which that has been confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
The side project that they were working on that was expected to be a third-person side gig, so to speak, for Destiny, that has been canceled. The updates for Destiny 2 are going to be lowered and slowed down as they, put the work forward with Marathon. And well, we have the podcast where, I mean, it's only 1 minute and 17 seconds. I will play that, so of course, for context, so you can see exactly what Jason Schreier had to say. But it doesn't sound good at all. And again, the Call of Duty thing. Look, I know there's going to be some people in the chat that are going to be like, "Oh, there's Boom wearing the tinfoil hat." But I got to be honest with you. It's just so suspect, man. Again, I think there's somebody like this in Sony waiting to push the screw you button? I don't think so. Okay, I just don't think so. But it's just so odd that jailbroken PS4s would be the culprit. I have the story that came the way of Insider Gaming, which of course is Tom Henderson's site, and we will read verbatim from there. But gentlemen, let's open up with the breaking news. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. This is exciting for me as a good human. No one was more pissed and deterred than I was when Tango Gameworks was closed. Mm-hmm. I came out, I gave the business, I did not make excuses. I know there's a lot of people like, well, Boom, they're in Japan and all of their, their anchors are here. Maybe he doesn't listen. It's a Japanese studio that you own. They have incredible IP in Ghostwire Tokyo. I don't know whether you folks played it or not, but I did. Loved every freaking second of it and was hoping for a sequel. The Evil Within, Part 1, not so much for me. Part 2, holy crap, it was amazing. Expected 3 to be announced. Well, that didn't happen. And what could you say? What could you say, folks, about HiFi Rush? Well, I'm going to be honest. If you had a negative opinion about it because maybe it's not your genre, I'm not going to fight you on it, right? That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. But I'm going to push back on you. It was an amazing game that gave us memorable characters, memorable artwork, a world that I wanted to revisit again, unbelievable music, rhythm-based combat that we haven't seen. I honestly don't remember the last time we've seen anything quite like it. And it launched literally perfect. Like no bugs, no 17.5 gig download for day one patches. It just worked, and it worked freaking well. Well, thanks to Jez Corden of Windows Central, which of course I'm going to read his story, published at Windows Central. He goes on to say, Krafton is picking up former Xbox team Tango Gameworks, as well as HiFi Rush, and that has been revealed. Obviously, he says revealed today, but that was revealed yesterday. Now, in one of my favorite sections of the publication for Windows Central, what you need to know. Well, let me break that down for you. The bullet points go as such. A few months ago, Microsoft announced plans to close Xbox Studio Tango Gameworks, its only Japanese-based team, as part of a round of cost-cutting measures. Tango Gameworks was known for titles like Ghostwire Tokyo and The Evil Within, as well as the recent breakout hit HiFi Rush. Krafton Incorporated publishes mega franchises like Battle Royales, Players Unknown Battlegrounds, and has expanded to other regions and exploring new game franchises as of late, which is great to know because now, PUBG, I'm sure it's making money for them, but they want to expand on it because there's so many, gas games out there. They're going to try and stretch their wings. This is a story that should get you, should make you happy as a human being. It goes on to say, Krafton Incorporated announced today that it has acquired Tango Gameworks as well as HiFi Rush, saving the team from closure. And the final piece of it says, Krafton Incorporated has confirmed that it intends to support Tango in the future development of HiFi Rush's IP. Now, this is exciting. Steel, I'm going to go to you first on this, brother.
Mm-hmm.
So you, like Pong, like myself, like Mav, like Fuzzy, like many people in our circle, our gaming circle of podcasters and content creators that we hang out with on a regular basis, we're pretty upset with the closure of the studio for a multitude of reasons. One, this is by far, and I think what's going to be remembered for 2024 isn't its greatest games, isn't the best value for your buck with Xbox Game Pass, isn't the return of Astrobot with, one of my favorite platformers from when the PS5 launched. That's getting a release in September, or the Nintendo titles that are coming out. Some are re-releases and some are fresh new ones. It's not going to be remembered by the games of 2024. And how 2024, at least in my personal opinion, is going to be remembered is by how many layoffs and studio closures this gaming industry has had, and what we've had to see many of our favorite developers endure. And I think we should never forget that, because these are real people with real life problems now that they're out of work. And I do want to kind of make sure that we don't forget that, which is why I will continue to discuss it. But specifically, going back to Tango Gameworks, they're not closing. HiFi Rush is coming back. This is big news. Let's get your hot take, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with this from Games Press. Just talking about the agreement. They're saying that as part of this agreement, Krafton intends to collaborate with Xbox and ZeniMax to ensure a smooth transition and maintain continuity at Tango Gameworks, allowing the talented team to continue developing HiFi Rush IP and explore future projects. Krafton intends to support the Tango Gameworks team to continue its commitment to innovation and delivering fresh and exciting experiences for fans. This, to me, speaks to more so what the current strategy of Microsoft seemingly is. And that is just teaming up with folks, teaming up with their partners, finding ways to cut deals in different ways. This to me signifies that there definitely was a stronger bond for this team to still be able to remain together for the time that they are. They weren't completely disbanded or anything. And just a willingness of both sides to even consider working together. I don't know whether them going to Krafton is a good thing or a bad thing. Krafton, again, the creators, the ones behind PUBG, Terra, and there's some other games that they throw in there as well, can be quite money hungry when it comes to their IP and when it comes to their games that they support. So with this being not that type of game for them, I do think that one thing that Krafton does have is enough money to at least support the development of a HiFi Rush 2 potentially through the earnings that they're getting through their other games, right? And I think that that's an initiative that some of these other publishers are starting to look at as well. You see it in the mobile space, especially, and I think that's the biggest door knocker that anybody can look to is Hoyo. They're a mobile. They make mobile games. They transitioned into consoles through PlayStation, right? So and there's kind of starting to blur the lines between what is a mobile game and what is a console game, or what are just action adventure games, gotcha games. What style of game? What do? There's too much of a blend going on now. That we're starting to see. So maybe this could be part of that expansion. I know from that same article that this acquisition for them, or this partnership for them, was a part of their global expansion. So it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Now, Krafton isn't one to necessarily keep games to themselves either. So I know some people were like, oh, watch Hi-Fi Rush 2 not go to Xbox. And it's like, I don't think that Tango has a bad relationship with Xbox just because of what happened, right? Now, is it unfortunate? Is it something that should have happened? Probably not. But if there wasn't any other way, them even saying, considering that we're still working with Xbox, Microsoft to make this transition, and even that could lead to a further partnership, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it's just like, sometimes there are some bridges that maybe have to be burnt to be rebuilt, because the foundation that they were using before, the struts or whatever, weren't what was needed to support that team, that studio, or whatever vision that they had. So and they're also saying that because of what has happened, there's not going to be any changes in development to any of the other games. Now, this is something that is also interesting to me, because again, Tango has the one game, right? And their other games I don't know when we're going to end up getting them. And if we end up getting Hi-Fi Rush 2 before you got an Evil Within 3 or whatever the case may be, then it's just like, okay, is it the internal side of the studio that may be having some issues? And is this going to be an opportunity for them to look internally, or has this entire time, right? That separation from Microsoft been an opportunity for them to look internally and say, all right, what is our goals? What is our vision? What are we trying to do? And because all these things are done through meetings and business meetings and sitting down and having conversations. So it's like, what did Tango convince them with that was going to be a good deal for them, for Krafton? And it had to be a lot. It had to be a good bit on the table. So I am extremely excited and hyped that they didn't have to completely disband. Again, I do think Tango has some skill underneath them, but I guess it's going to be more dependent now on when they get that Hi-Fi Rush 2 out, right? Because they didn't buy them for Hi-Fi Rush 1. They bought them for something else. And I think it's definitely going to be some of that game development expertise. But also I think the next game may be on that 2-year cycle, which would be really good for them, especially if the game sells well. The one thing that I will say about this is that hasn't been consistent is that people is extremely supportive of this team when they got cut off. I don't see as many people talking about it now that they've been brought back on. And everybody marking Xbox as the evil corporation in this entire scenario. It's just really weird to me, because this doesn't solidify necessarily anything either for them. It kind of puts them, in my eyes, a little bit more in limbo, just because of what we've seen from Krafton. But I mean, I don't know. We could be wrong. Things could change, and hopefully that this is exactly what they were looking for. So,
I mean, great points all around. Look, at the end of the day, you're onto something. Did they acquire this team for simply Hi-Fi Rush 2? I don't know. And that's a fantastic point that I actually didn't consider, because if there's one thing that we know about Krafton Incorporated is they want to make money. I don't know if Hi-Fi Rush 2 is going to be quote unquote a moneymaker. So Fuzzy, where I think the rubber hits the road here is I looked at some numbers this morning,
Mhm.
and you had over 3 million people play Hi-Fi Rush on Xbox, which is a lot of people. Now, should it have been 5 million or 10 million? I think so, because the game is phenomenal. But I went and looked at the PlayStation 5 sales, and the best that I could find was 529,000 copies purchased. A pinch over 500,000.
Yeah.
The game was super inexpensive because it was $30, but through if you had PlayStation Plus, you got it for 25 and change. So there was a discount. And obviously, only half. And I'm not being facetious. The game is phenomenal. It is a 10 out of 10 game. But like what we saw, what happened with the Destiny DLC, it was reviewed great. It just wasn't purchased, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know, Fuzzy Belvedere, if like Steele brought up a great point, whether or not Tango themselves were purchased for something else, because they did go out and purchase the IP as well for Hi-Fi Rush. The other IPs, meaning that the two that are left over, Evil Within 2 and Ghostwire, those remained, at least for now, according to the article, in Xbox's possession. It was only Tango. It was only Hi-Fi Rush. I know there's been a lot of talk in the community, like Steele also said, is there some bad blood where this game does not release on Xbox? I'm going to be honest with you. Based on the PlayStation 5 numbers of Hi-Fi Rush 1, I don't think they can afford to do that. So this is going to release on PC, on PS whatever, on Xbox whatever. It's going to be a multi-plat. I know that there's going to be some, was there bad blood? Maybe there is. Maybe John Johannes is like, yeah, F Xbox. I don't think, I don't know. I doubt it because he's a businessman, but there might be some hard feelings there. They closed their studio. That sucks. But thankfully, thanks to this acquisition, there's still going to be a studio. I think it's a big piece of news. Let's get your hot take on it, man.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying I was one of those that was adamant about trying to have Microsoft retain the talent, John Johannes in particular, and the talent that was still left at the studio. I know there was back and forth information about how talent has left. The two key people that left, yes, they brought some people with them, but there were still a significant amount of people still at the studio. The other lady started her studio. Haven't heard much about her game as of late. And with the original founder of the studio, which he also ran into problems with Tango, meaning how Bethesda had to purchase them or acquire them to kind of help him out before for mismanagement of funds or whatever the case may be. He's starting another new studio, which if you look at the track record, I would say not many people left to go to his new studio for the fact of how his original one wound up. So to dispel all of the back and forth about talent leaving, there was still significant talent there, which they also had an unannounced game that they were trying to pitch outside of a Hi-Fi Rush 2. I don't know if people remember, there was supposed to be an anime style RPG that they were to work on. I think that's the one, since it wasn't named, Microsoft can't really claim that that's their IP. So that same studio is probably going to continue work on that or fleshed out that idea and probably bring it to Krafton as their own IP at this point. Having Ghostwire Tokyo and Evil Within remain with Microsoft, that's great. We'll see if there is a partnership down the road where they hire Tango Gameworks to make future copies, which I think in Microsoft's interests as far as financial, it's probably better to do that than to retain whatever expense. Although operating a studio in Japan is a heck of a lot cheaper than operating one in Washington State or even operating one in California. Don't believe the hype about, oh, well, they're all the way across the world. Yeah. Washington State and even California is more expensive to operate.
Yes.
So all of that being said, I think this is the best opportunity, much like we saw with Toys for Bob, where instead of closing a studio, they have a second lifeline, let's say, to still continue to be creative, make games. Hopefully they land better as far as a wider audience. Not saying that Hi-Fi 2 Rush or Hi-Fi Rush, the original, didn't have that audience. $3 million is nothing to sneeze at, especially these days when, you know, pillar fighter games barely get 1 and 2 million sold copies. So all of that being said, now with the Switch 2 being right around the corner, Krafton, you know, pitching things on mobile devices, which will be handheld PCs or handheld consoles, as well as mobile devices. I think that gives that game the best opportunity for like the Hi-Fi Rush 2 to succeed or exceed, you know, the 3 million that it did on Xbox next go around. It also gives them time to also market some of those characters from that IP, which a lot of us were like, hey, why aren't there plushies? Why isn't there an anime, you know, for things for like Hi-Fi Rush? And now we'll see how that turns out if Krafton chooses to invest in those endeavors. But I think this is the best possibility outcome or best possible outcome. We'll see how it winds up in the long run. Krafton can make games as far as successful, and they can also make duds. So it's, you know, the possibilities are endless. But I think this is a worthwhile IP to continue to invest in, expand if possible, and that IP that they were, you know, working on originally before, you know, things kind of fell apart with Microsoft. I think that's what Krafton will, you know, hold tight to the vest, and that will be their own IP at this point. Whenever that, you know, anime RPG gets released, or if it even gets released. But I think that's why they're probably, in Krafton's eyes, a worthwhile purchase, not just for Hi-Fi Rush. But it's always great to try and retain talent. We'll get into the whole Bungie thing where that didn't quite work out. But in this case, I think this is the best possible outcome. Kudos to Krafton. Hopefully Microsoft may not be kicking themselves in the end. I mean, I don't think they will, but this, from an optic standpoint, probably didn't go over very well with some of the smaller studios in Japan that they were trying to, you know, not acquire, but partner with as far as for deals. Like anytime you're coming to a region that's as tight knit as like the Japanese developers are, having it where you close one that you owned. I mean, the sale might help things, but I'm pretty sure there's some other developers that might not be as willing to work with Microsoft now. But this may, you know, alleviate some of that. Hopefully it alleviates some of that. But we'll see how things go. I don't think Krafton's going to, or even Tango Gameworks would want to consider, you know, skipping Xbox. I think especially like with the numbers of how well it did on Xbox, even though those may not have been full on sales, it may have been players accessing it through Game Pass. I still think that platform is worthwhile, even if other developers don't see the value in it. I think they'll continue to support Xbox as a platform for their game releases, but it's better news than what it was, let's say 2 or 3 months ago when they were going to close the studio completely and everybody kind of, you know, resubmit their resumes elsewhere. So this is a positive step forward for all parties involved.
Absolutely, and again, there is that snippet of information that Steele read regarding the smooth transition, which I think is. I mean, listen, they were going to close the studio. That sucks. There was not going to be any further development on Hi-Fi Rush 2. Now there is. You know, and what's interesting, Fuzzy, you made a great point. A lot of people, including myself as the host, actually forgot about that rumored anime RPG that they were working on, and I think you might be onto something. That might be the actual title that Krafton took. Now, again, this is complete speculation over here. Maybe this anime RPG is something that they saw, and they're like, you know, we could make this into a gas game. Maybe that's what they do with it. You know, again, I don't know for sure, and again, it's pure speculation. But if they can absolutely find a way to make it into a gas type of title, they absolutely will in fact do that, because there's an opportunity for them to make money. And on top of that, making a Hi-Fi Rush 2 is something that is people are gonna buy. I'm gonna buy it. You're gonna buy it. Steele's gonna buy it. Right? So it's look, at the end of the day, why this for me is one of those feel-good stories is because the studio is not closing, and a very underappreciated IP is going to get a second life. And that is, for me, very exciting. But look, let me just welcome everybody. Big thank you to once again to everyone who actually was not subscribed. We crossed the 15,000K mark over the week, on Friday, which was pretty freaking cool. Woke up to 14,999. I was like, oh, come on, people, just one. And we wound up getting 16 more, which is great. So we're at 15,016, and now we're on the march to 16K. Thank you, Steele, and thank you, Fuzzy. Obviously, you're a part of that because you guys are here, and you've been here many, many times before, dropping it like it's hot, so to speak. And we crossed another milestone. But listen, let me catch up on a couple of channel member chats here. And we have Abdel114, who's been a channel member for an awesome 6 months. Thank you, kind sir, for the support. He goes on to say, I'm glad Tango stays open just so the pony bots and the biased media can stop crying and stop asking for Phil's job when he was cooking and he delivered. Hashtag no PlayStation 6. Yeah, there's a new story just dropped seconds ago, folks. I'm not going to talk about it here, but it appears, thanks to Tom Henderson, some investigative journalism, that according to AMD numbers, there's no PS5 Pro this year, but we'll get into that. I think we're going to save that for Wednesday because it's a big tech conversation, and I want to save that for Asante, which of course is one of our big tech guys there. So I'm gonna, again, the story literally just broke. It appears that there's no PS5 Pro this year. I'm not surprised. There's also no games outside of Concord and Astrobot, which I'm very excited for. As a matter of fact, I tweeted about it, and it didn't get a lot of push because people like boo with virtual tomatoes. I bought the special edition controller because I'm a nerd. I think that thing is dope. It's got eyes that blink. Who doesn't want that in their life? I need it, folks. I got it. So, of course, I'm excited for Astrobot. If you're not, I hear you. But I'm also a platform guy. I have been for years. And I got a matching nerdy controller, so I'm very excited for that. Whatever. But B Martin 001, who's been a channel member for a long 15 months, says this. Man, what a fire panel we have here today. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Boomstick, Steel Rain, Fuzzy Belvedere, you guys are awesome. That's very kind of you, B Martin. Thank you so much for the very, very kind words. And, of course, the ridiculous generosity with the support for the channel. Now, look. There were two other stories, and I'm kind of teetering, but I want to get into the Bungie one. Steel, look, Bungie has seen, man, it's just not been good. They have gone through the ringer. I don't know who you can actually blame. Is it the studio? Is it leadership? Is it a combination of the both? Is Sony to blame? Listen, I don't know. I mean, there's going to be a lot of opinions here. But what's interesting is we saw the latest DLC come out for Destiny 2. And like I said, people that are Destiny 2 fans quite enjoyed the final shape. And it had very high praise. It was reviewed very well. Unfortunately, a game, i.e. HiFi Rush, can be reviewed very well and, well, not sell a lot. And then things happen. Well, thanks to the sales being extremely on the low side versus expectations, some things happened with Bungie. We saw the reports where the board that consisted of two Bungie leadership positions versus Sony's one switched, meaning Sony had two, Bungie had one, and we got word that Herman Holtz is now running that studio. We also got some really ugly background information about, $2.3 million being spent for classic cars while people were getting let go in the first round of layoffs, which were 100 people.
Sure. Yeah.
That's ugly. I don't like it, but, I mean, he built this company. He's spending his money. I guess, that's fine. And what I have in front of me is shout out to J-Rock who posted this on the socials. And it says Marathon is in development hell, according to Jason Schreier. So I do have that 1 minute and 17 second clip that I want to hold on a sec here. Let me just fix this here. I did the picture in picture. No, I don't want to do that. So let me just blow up the screen, and I will play this for you folks. So it's a big part of the conversation. I don't know how much legs Bungie as a developer has left in them. Now, do I think they're closing tomorrow? I absolutely do not, and there's a reason for that. PlayStation spent $3.6 billion on the IP and the developers, and to retain 1.2, a lot of people don't know this, $1.2 billion of that 3.6 steel was to hold retention, to keep the talent from leaving. And it worked initially. Then we saw the first round of layoffs. Now we've seen the second round of layoffs. I don't know if there's going to be a third round. I hope there isn't. But we know 155 positions are now working directly for SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment, at PlayStation. They shuttered over 200 positions. We saw a lot of people that were posting about it. Hopefully those fine folks get work. It is a sad day anytime you hear layoffs. I mean, again, I understand that the world is what it is, but we're talking about gaming, and I kind of want to keep it tight because the world sucks right now anyway, but I want to keep it close to where gaming is seeing massive amounts of layoffs. So let me just pause this footage for a second, and let me do a screen share, ladies and gentlemen. Because I really think that it's worth playing this, even though I think Jason Schreier is a terrible human being. That's fine, but this is an important piece of the conversation that I want to bring up. And let me just get in there and do the screen blow up and play.
Part of this equation, of course, is the human part, which is that like Bungie just lost between the layoffs and the Sony moves. They've lost something like 500, 600 people over the last 2 years, a lot of whom were on either the Destiny team or support teams like QA and narrative and audio and player support. And so losing those people, you are losing resources. You are losing people who contributed a lot to the game, and the people who are remaining are going to have to work twice as hard because they have to do jobs of people who are now gone. And it's just kind of a messy situation that will just inevitably lead to challenges, unfortunately, for those people left.
And I mean, speaking of, I was going to say, what's the temperature check on how Marathon is going?
Not great from what I've heard. There's a reason that it was planned for this year and slipped a whole year, and people that I've talked to are a little pessimistic about it even hitting its current planned deadline, but we'll see. I don't know exactly when that is, sometime in 2025. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, the sentiment I've heard is not great around it, at least as of a few months ago.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, Jason Schreier. And I'll put it to this way. The chuckle before he answers tells me all I need to know. That it's just not in good shape. He brings up, again, a great point about how many jobs, how many loss of jobs they've been in the last 2 years. That retention that was expected to be, quote unquote, hold the line for the talent is gone. People are leaving. People are being laid off. There's a lot going on there. I don't think this is the last time we've heard layoffs. I unfortunately think it's going to be worse before it gets better. The issue at hand is how do they continue to work on Marathon and put out a solid, games as a service product when their last entry, even though it was reviewed very well, Steel, is just not selling. People got a distaste for Bungie because of the layoffs. People thought that, to be honest with you, the Destiny got a little long in the tooth. I stopped playing years ago, not because the game is bad. It's because there's only so much time in a day, and I'm limited to what time, and I can only play so many, black hole games as they're known. I only have, again, I play for an hour, 2 hours a day. Maybe if I'm lucky and the old man doesn't kick in and I'm up past midnight, I play for 3 hours a day. But that's not always the case. But let's get your hot take on this report. And I think that it is scaling, in my opinion. regarding the sentiment and the feeling of what's going on currently at Bungie and Marathon. I mean, you heard it right from the horse's mouth, Steel. It slipped this year. It may not even hit next year. That is bad news for Bungie, but I think worse news for Sony, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, it definitely is more so bad for Sony than anything else. Just because they stepped into this deal, at least from my understanding and from what we were led to believe. This entire deal was to help them with their live service strategy, or to figure out ways to diversify their multiplayer bag, for lack of a better way to put it. I have a love-hate relationship with Bungie, as a player who spent a lot of time in their world, and understand what Bungie has brought to the table fundamentally, right? I was what I would recall as a Bungie lever, right? I was a believer in everything that they would do, right? All the way up to, I would say, probably Witch Queen, maybe a little bit after that, because I did invest into Lightfall. But Destiny lost me a while ago when you started seeing some of the cracks. This was, and this was even after Microsoft, under Activision, when they were pulling content that you had paid for as a player, and giving you excuses for story reasons why that content can't exist anymore. Not only that, but again, and I get it. It's a looter shooter, grinding. It's all a part of the world. But giving you content that you can grind thousands of hours for, sometimes it takes that long to get what you're particularly looking for. To have those items taken away and then be sold to you years later, it's not the greatest feeling. And the thing that's really strange to me about Bungie as well is that, for as big as a team as they have working on one game, from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, and keep in mind, they only went to Destiny 2 because they ran into issues in Destiny 1 that required for them to get to just build the entire new game. Why, with all the monetization strategies that you have now caused, season passes, paying for dungeons, paying for the expansion pass for the year, and this is turned into a yearly thing, with all the money that you have been making from this, with all the people that have been playing your game, why do you still have a difficult time supporting yourself? And you're supposed to be the example for what live service is. And it's crazy to me as well, because what Destiny 2 is today, it wasn't like that in the first few years of the game being out, right? So this is another game that is taking 6 years for it to finally reach a solid place, and it still is not even getting the type of engagement that they are looking for, right? And at this point, at what point do you start looking at the studio themselves and their lack of consistency, or lack of spirit, or lack of boom? I tell everybody this all the time. I am a multiplayer lover, right? Co-op, PvP,
Yes, you are.
PvP is my main
your
thing,
DNA, brother.
PvP is my thing. Destiny demonstrated to me early on, I want to say in year 2 of Destiny 2, that they were not going to support PvP. And this was an issue that they carried over from Destiny 1 to, and then I years later find out that, oh, well, that team was pulled to make Marathon. Okay, but Destiny 2's PvP was good though, right? And so it's really confusing to me to see the kings of the originators, the grandfather of this first-person shooter space adventure that really puts you in the seat of whatever character that you create, have a difficult time deciding what it even wants to be. I got told for years after I dropped off of Destiny that Destiny is, when I used to talk to my homies about it, when I used to talk to people in the community about Destiny, that, oh, well, Destiny's not a PvP game anymore. It's just PvE, man. You should just get over it. That's just where their money is now. And it's like, so a team that was able to do both in Halo, you're telling me is a team that can't do both now, is not selling the game that they sold the vision on before. It is not a true MMO. does not feel that way most of the time. They have gotten better with even that over the years. So, and if they're struggling now with this, and you're seeing like, now we're hearing from Jason Schreier that even Marathon is in trouble, or they don't have a vision for it, because apparently we got additional information that it may end up being a hero shooter.
Yep.
More in the vein of like a Overwatch style game. So now we're going from a Tarkov extraction type shooter, which again, I know people say the market is flooded, but really tell me a game other than Tarkov that comes to mind that's a good extraction shooter. I'll wait. If you can't give me 3 at least, then the market's not flooded. There just hasn't been the one. Bungie could create that one, but they obviously don't even believe in themselves. There is something happening at an upper management level, whether it's upper game designers, whether it's upper art design, whoever it may be. Somebody has lost complete vision in whatever they're trying to do within their own IP and branch out. And it's only become more apparent under Sony, because Sony does not have the infrastructure for this. So like, this news is going to end up hitting these streets because you brought these people in under the guise that they were going to help you run yours. And now you have games that people are saying, well, Jim Ryan, he highlighted all these, he greenlit all these other games, you know, Last of Us, Spider-Man. It's seemingly to me like maybe Jim Ryan had the right idea, but the wrong people there's still people in who have the wrong vision. And bringing Bungie in has only exposed the lack of vision even further. Because again, if Marathon doesn't come out and be the one, Bungie's not going to exist as they had ever been before. This will be another what's the example that you guys use? BioWare situation, where it is a complete shell of itself. And I think they're already at that level. We've been seeing people leave Bungie for years. Games development has only gotten further in that game. This is the 10-year game, right? This is the 10-year game, live service game that most people ask for. And it still can't support itself. Even WoW can support itself.
Indeed.
So I just start kind of asking myself, like, who's the question? Who's the problem? There has to be more things going on here. I have a complete lack of faith in Bungie, and what they can create. Again, that bridge has been burnt for me too many times as a gamer, as a enjoyer of their worlds, that I'm not even willing at this point to give Marathon a try with, if it releases with all the things that we're continuing to hear. Now, again, we'll see, but this doesn't bode well for the industry, as we were talking about people still being able to be what they are with like Tango. I don't think that that's going to be the case with Bungie. And people were like, oh, well, Bungie has this deal where they're not going to get folded into PlayStation if they do the ABC things. And Bungie burnt the books to even get in the door. So now they're getting folded regardless. Like, it's just, it feels really scummy. And question makes me have more questions in what's happening in that ecosystem over there. And again, those quotes we were getting from Hiroki Totoki, man, I had to shout out to Pong on that, man. He brought up a point. He was like, it's really starting to seem like the main crux that he was talking about is Bungie. Your Naughty Dogs, your these teams that spend all this time creating these experiences, these games, and for whatever reason they don't get out on the market. So it's crazy, man. It's unfortunate to hear that Bungie's in that state. Again, we were all looking at 343, and yes, they have their stuff to work on as well. But I never would have, if you would have asked me 4 years ago that, hey man, do you think Bungie is going to be falling off, or are you not as excited for their next game? I would have told you, nah, man, you crazy, man. And I still think that they have the best shooter on the market in Destiny, and don't choose to maximize the experience. But they're asking themselves questions about, oh man, where's the money? Where's the players? Where's this? Where's that? I don't know, man. It opens a lot of doors, it opens a lot of questions. But yeah, man, I'm extremely jaded about it. I can talk about hours about Bungie and everything that they've kind of been seemingly hinting at over the years for their direction. And again, there's more information coming out now as well that Activision was pulling the reins back on them from adding even more things to buy in Destiny 2. It's like, bro, what is happening behind the scenes? It's just extremely interesting. So
it's also disappointing. I was a Destiny fan since inception, played Destiny 2, played up until when Cade was killed. That's the last time I played. That's got to be at least 4 years ago. It's been a minute. Not that the game is bad. Not that I hate Bungie. I loved Destiny and Destiny 2 for that matter, but just not enough time. So, Fuzzy, let's bring you in on it now. Steele made a point, a couple of really, really good points. So I want to add some context to it. The question that has been asked: if the savior of gas games and how they're run was the Bungie purchased, right? Why they went out and spent $3.6 billion on Bungie is for their experience, their know-how on how to make gas games profitable. Well, who saves the savior? Well, it's not Bungie. And so Bungie finds themselves in the crosshairs. So what Steele also mentioned is some quotes from Hiroki Totoki, who is the Sony president, the CEO, and the CFO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. He gave some details on the restructuring of Bungie. This comes the way of Genki_JPN. He goes on to say, the purpose is cost restructure and portfolio optimization. He goes on to say, we have to enhance efficiency of the business itself. Bungie's back office functions will be integrated into Sony Interactive Entertainment. Bungie headcount and resources will be concentrated into Destiny 2 and Marathon. Other title developments at Bungie will be transferred to PlayStation Studios, and finally optimize overall studio structure. Now we have heard rumors that this is just rumors, that Bungie knows how to spend money, not necessarily knows how to make it. And a perfect example of, well, we're seeing what happens. Let's get your hot take on the Jason Schreier report, where things aren't going so well for Team Bungie when it comes to Marathon. And obviously, it was supposed to release in 2024, slipped until 2025. And based on the information that we just played live on the air for you, may even slip into 2026. That is potentially disastrous for both Bungie and Sony Interactive Entertainment.
Well, before I tackle the Jason Schreier, because I'm not a fan of his, but we'll get to that shortly. I want to tackle the Hiroki Totoki quotes and everything. All of those statements are basically in the business world saying you can't do your job, so we're going to take some of that responsibility off your plate and redistribute it amongst the company, because obviously you're a screw up. We don't want to fire you just yet, but we want to at least get this stuff that's costing us money done so we can get the return on investment. That's basically what he's saying. I would have never thought, like, after this acquisition, when everybody was saying, oh, this is better than what Activision and Microsoft's acquisition was going to be. We all see it's not
why
even
he's
done
fired,
and we see where things are going. So let's be clear on it. Bungie, whether it's Pete Parsons or others, I tend to point more towards him for buying cars as opposed to maybe putting some of that reinvestment back into the company to retain some of your talent there, or letting them get that investment after being with the company for so long, and they're like a week or two away from investment, so they can get some of the internal shares. You go and lay them off, like specifically the ones that are closest to that investment. It's like, if that's not the maker of evil within the corporate space, I don't know what is. I mean, yeah, there's other things that can be done. I'm not saying he should give up his entire bonus to keep either others employed or things along those lines, but these are scummy moves that typically the CEO that probably is good at starting a company, but terrible at running a company usually do. And it's unfortunate that Sony had to find out this way. Like I said, I would have thought, and normally when you see a bad relationship, you usually are like, oh, well, Microsoft, they were terrible. Okay, no problem. Then you go over to Activision. Oh, well, they were terrible. Now you get to Sony. You could say maybe Sony was terrible, but no, obviously now we've learned that Bungie was the problem all along, and Sony's got the fix for it. It's called dissolvement. If you wait long enough, you'll see. But back to Jason Schreier with the I guess you could say development hell for Marathon and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of the dude for the fact that if it was Microsoft, hey, the second highest person at a particular studio could leave for any number of reasons, and it's like front page news, and obviously Microsoft's at fault. They suck at what they do, mismanagement this, mismanagement that. But he's kind of probably known this stuff for some time. Like,
right.
I'm not an insider, but I know a father of a former Destiny dev that was talking about this 2 years ago. It's been a known thing. Anybody that has any insight to Sony, which Jason Schreier does, that it was a dumpster fire from jump.
Yep.
And prove it. Let's look at the games that got shot down versus what was approved. You shot down, factions, which, okay, let's just say Naughty Dog didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't remember how they got Factions 1 to be somewhat, enjoyable, and then transfer that to Factions 2. No, let's just assume that, right? Bungie shoots it down. They spent all this money and time in that. And that game, I guarantee you, even in its most broken state, would probably double the revenue for Sony of any of the DLC that came from Destiny. And here's why.
Indeed. 1,000%.
Let's look at the day before. If any of you remember, yes, I know it was a scam. Development group was terrible, but just the thought of that type of environment and that type of game had people wish listing it beyond all recognition. Like the only thing that ever beat it out was Hogwarts on the wish list. Now I know that's not a definitive way to judge how well a game will do, but that shows that there is so much interest in this like zombie apocalypse PvP, PvE type of scenario. Like if you could mash up the best things of The Division and The Last of Us, that's what they should have just made. And I guarantee you if they released it just with the most basic stuff, people would have enjoyed it enough to stick with it for them to learn or figure out what they need to do to keep the game going. They would have, as long as they listen to the player base.
Yeah, the players will tell you. Yeah.
They would have had years and years of revenue and years of content that they could have pushed out and made money off without any problem. But I always joked about it. I was like, well, maybe Destiny or the Bungie saw that this would make them less relevant. So we got to, like maybe an internal competition thing. Well, let's shoot those guys down. Helldivers, they couldn't shoot down because that was like 90% across the finish line by the time they came in to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And we all see how the studio head over at Arrowhead would have probably said, F you, we're still going to put this game out the way it is. These guys may not be all that they claim to be. So he has, I know it's an afternoon show, but he had the testicular fortitude to, to push that his game was the way it should be and push it out the door. And we see the success it had. Now, granted, it's not in that same spot now, but I think a lot of that is thanks to PlayStation pushing its, PSN ID. However you feel about it, there are still people that are, opposed to those things. And Sony could have made it work. Like, yeah, you may not have the internal numbers on exactly every player, but if you just look at the amount of players in the game, that you could take to the board and say, okay, we learned from this that we should probably start with the PSN ID stuff from get-go, or we need to incentivize people to switch to that, whether it's give them skins or season pass stuff, whatever. They could have made that their learning curve for how to deal with, the PC space moving forward. Instead, they went with the nuclear option and, kind of killed the momentum that game had. Now we'll see with continued content if that ever comes back, but it was kind of like a learning process for Sony, more so than Arrowhead, because I think they had all of the things in place that would have made that a success and continue to keep it a success. But the nasty taste from at least the PC crowd with the launcher, or not launcher, but the PSN stuff, that definitely killed that. But moving on, for it, Bungie looking over at the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Man game, like let's be clear here. A game like that, considering you could sell all kinds of Spider-Man skins and Spider-Man or Spider-Verse related things to that game, that would have been an easy cash cow for them. And somehow that got shot down. Yes, it's a licensing thing. Yes, they'd have to give up a nice chunk to Marvel or Disney in that regard, but that would have still probably recouped a lot of funds that they have tied up into their Marvel contracts as it exists now, that it would have still been worthwhile. All of that said, somehow Bungie got into somebody's ear to, maybe this isn't the right look, but they approved Concord, which looks almost like Destiny PvP light. It has some of the appearance. Now, I didn't have hands-on to say from a gunplay standpoint, it has that same exact feel, but it had the look, at least, of some of the PvP stuff that you would see in Destiny that has been ignored for years. And you would think that would have been the perfect opportunity for them to kind of focus or put that focus in Marathon. But now that they're going with this hero shooter thing, much like Concord, I don't know. Maybe that was why they approved it, because some of the things that they saw that Firewalk was doing, or Fire Sprite, or whatever their name is, was what they wanted to do or see some potential in for their Marathon game. But I remember hearing the reports before with they brought in Escape from Tarkov people to ask them what they thought of it, and they're like, I wouldn't play this. And once again, people will say Escape from Tarkov is niche. I mean, you have DMZ and a couple other things like with Battlefield that they tried as well. That was like an extraction shooter. To me, and I'm not the biggest PvP guy, I'll be honest. I leave that to people like Steel that are more of that on the edge of multiplayer PvP and stuff along those lines. But I still love how the original Dark Zone was for the Division, for Division 1. Division 2, splitting it up kind of watered it down a bit, and it didn't keep it as consistent, or it made it so you didn't have quite the same type of encounters or as many encounters as you would with the way Division 1 was set up. But I still think that was the epitome of an extraction shooter. And the fact that that game has been it's still got a player base. It's still successful by Ubisoft standards. I'm surprised that Bungie hasn't looked at that and then taken what the player base and some that have left or that refuse to leave Division 1 and still play the Dark Zone in the Division 1, why they haven't taken that or the feedback from launch and just make that for Marathon. Like, that was more so what people wanted, where you could get backstabbed at the extraction point, instead of just making it where it's like, oh, camp here and shoot everybody that walks past this alleyway or whatever. No. Just have it focus on, hey, you can work together, but then, when it's time to get out of there, then choices can kind of go south or go left or whatever. I think that would have been their better approach when it comes to Marathon. But if it's in development hell, it's already slipped out of 2024. It could slip out of 2025. I don't know why Jason Schreier doesn't have the full-on, transcript out there about how.
Oh, he does, but he just chooses not to. Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels like there's a cover up. I know conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat, whatever, but it just feels like, oh, I don't want to talk bad about a game I enjoy playing, even if I'm not enjoying it at the moment, because it's my preferred platform. But if had this been Xbox, I mean, shout out to Phil for dodging a bullet when they were in talks with Bungie about the acquisition.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Phil and team probably looked at the books. Credit to like Steel and Pong as far as, they cooked the books and they probably saw right through that mess. So I'm glad Xbox passed on that. I got flack for when I said, Xbox didn't want to spend the money or it was, too pricey. And people were like, they just spent billions of dollars on Bethesda. I'm like, no, it's not that it's too expensive. They can't afford it. It's too expensive for what it's worth. It's like, they're not going to overpay. Like, if you go to the dealership and you see, one of the new demon challengers out there, and it's like, oh, sticker says 120, but the dealership is saying 220. You're not paying that extra 100,000 for the car. They can go kick rocks at that point. That's the situation with Bungie. And, maybe that some of that overpayment that the guy wanted was so he can add to his car collection. We'll never truly know, but it kind of seems that was what that was about. It's like, hey, our real price is $2 billion. We want $4 billion, so I can put $2 billion to my car collection. And, that's how it went down. But yeah, this is a dumpster fire that's going to continue to burn until Sony finally takes everything over. And we'll see if Pete Parsons, leaves and starts, Bungie 2 or whatever he wants to call it. Maybe he should call it Car Collectors Anonymous or something. And that will be his next studio, and see how it goes from there. But yeah, I've rambled enough. I'm sorry.
No. Listen, great points from everybody. The chat's going back and forth. We got nearly 600 people watching live across Twitter and of course X X and YouTube. So thank you for being here. Real quick before we get into the final topic of today's show, and that is going to be all of Black Ops 6 campaign cutscenes have leaked, folks. We got some information coming the way of Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming. I got the article queued and ready to rock and roll. We got to thank JJ saying 117 for the very generous $5 super chat. He goes on to say, yay, Tango is saved. Microsoft hopefully will do a partnership like they did with Toys for Bob. Also, Xbox not marketing Call of Duty could be the FTC. They want them off their backs. They're going to win them out eventually. The money that they're spending the FTC for a frivolous case is going to dry up. She's going to be out of a job, and this is just going to go by the way of just another failed FTC attempt. And again, me and Steele were talking about this. I mean, just imagine this to make it as simplistic as possible. Steele says on a regular basis that we need to pull ourselves out from an RTS point of view. So I want you to just imagine this in your head. Pull yourself to outer space and look at the world. The entire human planet known as Earth has approved this deal except the Americas, United States, because of one person who should not be running the show. Has nothing to do with her being a woman, has nothing to do with her being uneducated. She is just stubborn. And this is a losing battle. So just imagine you're trying to ice skate uphill, i.e. Blade, right? There's another way he says it, but I'm saying it the polite way. And the entire planet approves this deal, and you're the last one standing to make a point. I don't get it. She's going to lose again, and ultimately it's probably going to cost her her job. With that said, again, it's just one of those things. I don't necessarily know if, again, there's some talk. I know that Paris has literally just tweeted about it. There was something on the Iron Lords yesterday. I have not listened to it yet with Destin Legary, where Cognito was talking about that people have heard that they can't really push the pedal to the metal with Xbox Game Pass and Call of Duty, something to do with the FTC potentially being on their backs, or something in the deal that they made to get this across, this purchase across the finish line. I don't know until we hear somebody from Xbox and Microsoft talk about it. We'll see. It's a rumor right now. We also have Raiden Blade, who's been a channel member for, 38 months. Bro, thank you so much for the continued support. He goes on to say, wait a minute. Are you telling me that Tango Games was sold, not closed, and devs played of WoW? So I guess he says the devs played. And wow, where is acquisition news of London studios? Pure silence. Yeah, London studios closed and there's no one to save it. This one over here, from what the report says, Microsoft was heavily involved in getting this deal done for Tango and for themselves, for that matter. Like I said, it's a really feel good story, at least for me, for Tango, for HiFi Rush. And I'm glad that they're not a closed studio. I really am. And I hope Krafton allows for them to not only make this mythical RPG, this anime RPG that we've heard about, but also actually bring us a HiFi Rush 2, which I think would be great. But listen, gentlemen, Steel, I'm going to go to you first. I don't know if you got to go pick up the kids or not. I want to get you in on this immediately. Again, This story comes the way of us from Insider Gaming Network. It was written by Tom Henderson, posted on August 10th, and it goes on to say all Black Ops 6 campaign cutscenes have leaked online. And of course, I'm going to read verbatim from the article, folks. It says the entirety of Black Ops 6's campaign have been leaked online over 2 months before the game's official release. The campaign has been uploaded to X, formerly Twitter, by user KivICow, where they said, spoiler alert, I did a funny. And of course, they were hit with what is considered a DMCA. And if that is an issue of a cease and desist order, that, and I would imagine that their Twitter account has been closed, because this is a big one. Now the story goes on to say, according to our estimates, hundreds of people have already gained access to Black Ops 6 via jailbroken PlayStation 4 consoles. Some users have resorted to uploading the content online. Now, the campaign leak, according to the story, Steel, marks another huge blow to the developers behind Black Ops 6. So far, the entire beta build, and all of the game's achievements, and now the entirety of the campaign cutscenes are online. Now, I'm sure a lot of them have been taken down, but it is the internet. You can only do so much damage control. Speaking with several Black Ops 6 developers, they are understandably upset and frustrated over the large amount of leaks, which is an unprecedented amount for Call of Duty. One developer goes on to say, it really sucks to see our big reveal ruined like this. We were all excited to show it off in a big and special way. Black Ops 6 multiplayer is set to be officially revealed at the end of August in the COD Next event, which will be prior to, of course, the Black Ops 6 beta. Let's talk about this, because again, I know this, we're just being facetious, or at least I am being facetious. I just find it so odd that they upload this, meaning Activision, they upload this to PlayStation, and it gets leaked. Now, I've seen some really, egregious takes about whether or not this was done on purpose. I said it jokingly. I was never serious that someone at PlayStation is like this. And we're gonna fix their asses and we're gonna leak everything online. I don't know. But I can say, and again, this is my opinion, is it because Sony does lack the vision for security when it comes to their platform? And let's call a spade here. They have had some really egregious security leaks over the years, dating all the way back to the PlayStation 3 during 2006, where their service was shut down for months. And I mean, I've always said it jokingly, and maybe I'm being a little coy here. I always wondered whether or not their security online systems were held together by bubblegum and paper clips, because they always seem to be getting hacked one way or another. And the most notable one is, of course, the one where Wolverine, the game, you can play right now. All of those secrets behind the Spider-Man multiplayer and a bunch of stuff for Insomniac were out there. This is not good, man. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, man. Nah, it's not good at all. I mean, Sony definitely seems to have been being consistent as far as back end goes, for lack of a better way to put it.
I
can't say it's for one reason or another. Could it just be because it was on the PlayStation 4? And because of that, there's some workarounds that you could put on there. The main thing that's really weird and concerning to me is typically when you mod something, and I know we're still working on how to get better with this as well. But typically, if you mod something, there is something in the files that will tell you that will at least tell the server that some file has been tampered with. That's why there's certain programs and mods, like more visual based mods, that you can use on PC for some games that you can't use in online games because it's registered as an external piece of software or whatever, something running in the background that shouldn't be. So it's really concerning to me and interesting to me as well that PlayStation doesn't have a way, because I thought that they fixed it to where any modded PlayStation that went online was instantly banned. Now, maybe they lapsed in that a little bit because they hadn't had nobody do that in a while. Again, you brought up some good points, Boone, to where they've consistently have been having security issues for some time. I mean, to be honest, the entire industry has, but just to keep it in the gaming space, this is not something that I have to necessarily worry about being in the Microsoft ecosystem. It's not ever something I have to think about, and that's something I have to wonder about. But it also comes down to people just being terrible people too, man. Getting any leaks getting put out by anybody is always bad work, man. It's not something that you want to do, downplay other people's hype, other people's excitement. But it has been a reality of not just this business, but many businesses where information just gets put out there. Now, seemingly, I do think that because of the amount of time Black Ops 6 has been given for development and how ready people are seeming as well, I think more information that comes out about the game, it's only going to do better for the game itself. So if this was done maliciously, as if like, oh, PlayStation's going to leak it out there so they can give Xbox problems, you're barking up the wrong tree. This isn't the 70-30 split that you were getting before, and Xbox is getting a 30. No, Xbox is getting 70, scratch that, more than that, probably even more towards 90 of what they were ever getting before. So it's like, I don't know necessarily if that's the case. I think it's just people being hype about Black Ops or hype about any game or anything, that any form of entertainment that comes out, and wants to get the information out there to people so that people can see what they're kind of working with. I think it's, again, I think the first leaks that were kind of being put out there on the streets a little bit was from the PlayStation 4. I'm surprised that the game is running on PlayStation 4. Again, we talk about things that are going to move the needle for, or move people to the next generation. And you see that Call of Duty is still doing the same thing. And again, I just think that this just more solidifies the fact that we're in different times. But it's never good to see stuff like this gets leaked out. I mean, we have these people that dedicate years of their lives to this work, and to have somebody just put it out and for whoever to see before it's even ready is it's just something that you got to shake your head at. But again, it is up to wherever the source was. If it was PlayStation, PlayStation needs to be held accountable. That's something that they need to make sure that doesn't happen again. There's plenty of ways to check that, and I know people are looking for ways to always get around that. But as we become more online, I lean more so on the side of, let's hold these publishers to feet to the fire and say, hey man, this has been an ongoing issue for you somewhat. Why is this or even allowed or possible, or whatever the case may be, even if it is modded PlayStations? So,
you know something, dude? You schooled me once again, which you have done quite a few times today on the podcast.
no.
I did not know that if you put a PlayStation, a modded PlayStation 4 online, it was automatically banned.
Yeah, that's why they don't want you to do it. It's the same thing with the Switch. If you ever mod your Switch, and for anybody that does it out there, and of course there's ways to get around certain things, but if you officially, like, if you get onto the Nintendo server and, like, let's say I go play Smash Brothers online, you're going to get caught either by Nintendo themselves, and they're going to brick your entire device. And that was something that Xbox was doing at one point as well. And I think why you don't have the issues with Xbox, as at least from what I've seen, because the last time that I've heard was one of my homies, he had a modded Xbox One, and it was an Xbox One X, and he had an Xbox One S that he modded because he's just ridiculous, has money that he just don't know what to do with and can't help himself. But he has throwaway accounts. He's just a weird dude. But anyway, but he had modded both devices, and he had accidentally put both of them online because they were connected with each other, whatever, because he was downloading the game, and they break both the consoles. He could never, can't unlock it, can't do nothing to it. It's done with. So
paperweight. Wow. Well,
Yep.
You know what? I was unaware of that. But listen, Good stuff as always, brother. Now, again, can you hang out for the next 10 minutes or so? Or you got to
Yeah,
bounce.
let's do it, man. Let's do
All
it.
right, let's excellent. So, Fuzzy, let's bring you in and get your hot take on this because, again, ultimately, I think where I can understand as a developer, and I'm not a developer, I'm a podcaster, so I don't make games for a living. I wouldn't even know where to start. But it does kind of suck to know that all the work that you've put into on a game gets out there and it gets leaked. Nobody wants that. That is horrible. Now, I saw some people push back on this and say, well, Boom, most people, they don't play Call of Duty for the single player. And you know what? You're probably right. Listen, I played for the single player, but I haven't seen any of the cutscenes because I'm not actively looking for them. I don't care. The Call of Duty story is going to be what it is. It's going to be a Jerry Bruckheimer type of experience, I would imagine, where you are blowing things up and you have a pretty decent story beat. I'm not going to be spoiled by any of this. It still sucks nonetheless, and it does suck even worse that this happened thanks to modded or jailbroken PS4s.
Yeah.
It's disappointing. I don't think it's going to hurt sales. I just don't. It's going to be the biggest selling Call of Duty in a long time. I think that from what we've heard from the back end of it, where remember, this is the longest development cycle in years for Call of Duty. We've already seen the game looks fantastic, right? Yeah. Zombies looks amazing. The single player is going to be outstanding, even with the leaks or whatever. Let's get your hot takes on what happened.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I may mention this before with Call of Duty for this particular title. I'm pretty sure there's now follow-up meetings like, man, we should have probably just made this next gen only, not just for the console sales standpoint, but things like this, like jailbroken PS4s has always been a thing, and a lot of times when you would see a lot of those updates, because I remember more so on PS4 as opposed to like PS5 now, the updates seem to be fewer and far between. But before, there was almost like weekly updates for a while they were trying to stay on top of these jailbroken PS4s, because what that can allow you to do is you basically download the software from the store without actually paying for it. It allows you to do other things within the games, almost as if it was a PC, where you can create mods and have access to DLC that you didn't pay for, or do things like GTA and have money bags drop on people you want to get banned in Rockstar games. So it's just funny to me that PlayStation and security are like on opposite sides of the spectrum, whether it's their own security for their customers' information, or just their hardware being, hackable to the point where they have to constantly release updates to kind of, patch some of those backdoor deals that people have been able to find. And as soon as they patch one, the same people find a new exploit. So it's Sony, while they're great at making hardware, suck at securing that hardware. Of course, Microsoft being the software company, not saying that they suck at hardware. They do actually really well with hardware. It's just either sometimes, like with the Surface brand, it's a bit pricier, but you get what you pay for. Or with Xbox, they try their best to make what is the most powerful at the time, even if devs decide that they don't want to do that. So all things aside, it sucks for the development team to have their work exposed prior to them getting the chance to announce it and unveil it in front of the fans and see the reactions there, as opposed to reactions on social media because some knucklehead, jailbroke their PlayStation and now they're trying to spoil it. And they're probably thinking, oh, I'm going to kill sales on this game. And probably what they did was actually do some free advertising for the fact that a lot of people like the movement that they see, like what they've seen on everything, not just like cutscenes and stuff, but the overall gameplay in general. And then seeing the zombie stuff, which they've just recently unveiled some things on that. I think this is going to be a solid selling, maybe one of their top 3 most selling Call of Duties, in the 20-year history. So this one, none of this is going to affect it negatively. I think the worst thing that would have happened is if they did go next gen only, is that there's going to be a handful of PS4 and Xbox One owners that are going to feel slighted and probably hold off at least for the first few months until FOMO kind of takes over and they see like maybe a holiday bundle or something like that to hop into the next gen. But yeah, sucks for, from the anticipation standpoint, sucks for the devs seeing, some of the stuff spoiled in advance. But all in all, I think, these PlayStation ponies at this point that did it probably wanted that 15 minutes of fame as far as, oh, I leaked this stuff. And then, probably also thought, oh, I can, punch back at Xbox and Activision because they stole my favorite game, even though you still have access to it. And it's just going to wind up backfiring on them to the point where, yeah, this will probably sell more Xboxes and sell more copies of that game, just because a lot of the stuff that, Call of Duty fans are seeing are exactly what they want in Call of Duty. So we'll see how this plays out, but stop with the spoilers, people. Come on. Let's, at least hashtag spoiler, so that for those that do block, things like spoilers or whatever, or even things like on Reddit where you hashtag that, sometimes they'll block it out. So at least it gives you a chance not to see that stuff. So we'll see.
It's always disappointing to see that the length that some people go to try and get their point across. Again, it's just disappointing all around. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to hurt sales, folks. Was it breaking news? Sure. Was it a big deal? Absolutely. We have a couple of super chats here that actually kind of drive the point home. This is great before we get on out of here. The Mad Leprechaun, first of all, brother, welcome to the program, and thank you very much for the very generous $5 super chat. He goes on to say, well, this puts a dent into Xbox kills game studios narrative. Of course, he's talking about Tango Gameworks. And I mean, that's a fantastic point. I know that they work super hard to get this deal done. I don't think they should have closed the studio, or at least announced that anyway. But that's just, at least the studio was saved. Again, for me, it's the feel-good story of 2024, considering how many studios have closed, how many layoffs there have been. This is a triumphant win for Tango and its entire staff. And of course, if you're a fan of Hi-Fi Rush like I am, it's a winner chicken dinner. No pun intended. We also have here Hooks, who drops a very generous $5 super chat. And this is a great point, Hooks. He goes on to say, would this leak have been possible if Black Ops 6 was current gen only? That's exactly what Fuzzy Belvedere has been saying. And you know something? Look, I get it. The bean counter's like, we cannot leave out all of this money. I really think you would have seen console sales on both. I think that people go out and buy a PS5 who were on PS4. But then again, I think a lot of that transition could have been Xbox Series S consoles. And if Microsoft would have done a deal where, $299 gets you the console and the game, or $200 gets you a 30-day Game Pass card, getting people into the service, I think it's numbers that it would have sold more. You would have moved more Series S consoles during this time than you would at launch. That's how big of a deal Call of Duty is. But, needless to say, it is what it is. Again, I'm sorry that the leak happened. Of course, I feel really bad for the developers. I don't think it's going to hurt the game at all. It is going to sell. But let's get everyone out of here. And I'll start with Steel Rain. Brother, thank you so much for joining us today. This was,
yes, sir.
Again, great to have you a part of the show and get your hot take on 3 really big topics. Sell your brand, brother. Talk about Living Split Screen, 10 a.m. Eastern on Eastern time, Saturday mornings with your brother from another, Pong Soul. You guys do an amazing job bringing everyone up to date with all the news. But let's sell your brand. Where can people subscribe? Help you continue to grow the incredible brand of Living Split Screen, but more importantly, follow you on social media.
Well, the main place that's important is definitely follow Living Split Screen, ladies and gentlemen. Living Split Screen, all one word. And definitely check us out every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, and 3 p.m. UK time. Because, we like to take that RTS approach, pull ourselves out of the world, look at the darker crevices of that map, pull our resources together so we can build up that foundation. Not only that, we're non-console centric, so there's something to keep in mind in case you just want a place to kind of kick your feet up relax, not be so tied up in one base or the other base, and just have good conversation. But for me, you can find me Steel Rain. That's Steel Rain that T is a 7 everywhere. Google is the easiest place to probably type that information in, but I do frequent the streets of X, otherwise known as Twitter, and also the Xbox ecosystem, because it just works so well between the console and the PC itself. With that said, man, it was a beautiful episode, beautiful conversation to be able to be had here. The chat was on fire as well. And it's always a good time to be able to come through the back door with the key, sit down on the couch, and chop it up with my brothers, man. So much love to y'all, and chat. Y'all have a good day, and don't work too hard out there. Be safe.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show, brother. Definitely appreciate the knowledge you dropped today, and of course, love the work that you're doing each and every Saturday morning with Pong, bringing us great pieces of information as well as great opinions that follow. Of course, Fuzzy Belvedere, let's sell your brand, brother, because not only is your channel growing, we want to get, at least for the goal of 2024, get you to 1K. Folks, if you're not following him on social media, I'm here to tell you you're doing it wrong. But worse is you're not subscribed to his channel, which, of course, you can find all of his information in the show notes. Double-click it, follow, sub, and you're good. And if you're feeling extra generous, hit the bell icon that you know every time he goes live, because his channel is the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. Brother, sell the brand. Tell everyone where they can subscribe to your YouTube channel, but more importantly, follow you on social media.
First off, I wanted to just thank you for having me on today, and it was awesome having Steel Rain on here this afternoon as well. Love your guys' takes and perspectives on things. Love just having a conversation on gaming, this hobby that we all enjoy. So it was an awesome time this afternoon. Thanks to everybody in the chat for checking us out. Greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to check us out and interact with us. Truly, truly appreciate it. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's what we greatly appreciate. I'm probably stumbling here a bit, but for those that want to hear my I can't even say my own lines. For those who want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just follow me on the app, formerly known as Twitter, at Fuzzy_Belvedere. You can do the same search on YouTube to find my channel. And for horror fans, also subscribe to Ferocious Fi for Fiona, on both X as well as on YouTube, for anybody that's into the horror genre, along with gaming that's horror related, or movies and TV series as well. Every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a roughly a hour and a half to 2 hour podcast about that topic. But you can also find me on FSP later on tonight on Fun Speculations channel at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Hope to see you guys there in the chat. And then look forward to seeing you guys right back here on this channel on Friday morning for Breakfast with Boom, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you both being here. Thank you, chat, for being here also and hanging out. Obviously, a big thank you to all of the super chats that dropped, as well as the consistent support through channel membership. Mrs. Boom and I are incredibly grateful for your generosity. And of course, I'm going to close out today's show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you, you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.